Sanctuary is the most unspoilable game that has ever been made. It's the epiphany of esoteric and complex, and is a pseudo-commentary of the quasi-existential aspects of globalization through the lens of an open apocalyptic scenario. It's a game created by one of my favorite artists of all time, James Ferraro, and one that is quite known for his involvement in the Drain community, as in the other person who worked on this, to be more exact, Bladee. I've spoken about James Ferraro in a previous video, to be more exact in my Dempa video, when I spoke about his involvement in the creation of the hypnagogic pop genre, and his vast and outright strange views, but genuinely understandable on globalism and hyperreality. I really want to talk about it, so much so I cancelled my other projects and went into a stupor writing. I wrote this in my wake, from my soul and for you all. Please enjoy the video. Standing before this game, I feel as if I have been handed a cryptic manuscript, written in the language of decay and digital disarray. Every pixel and corrupted texture seemed to whisper a secret from a civilization long past. A civilization that, like us, was caught in the relentless grip of progress and its inevitable decline. I'm drawn into a labyrinth where each detail, no matter how minute, is saturated with meaning. The muted, washed-out hues and the foreboding ambient hum of technology serve as a constant reminder of a time when innovation was both a promise and a curse. In this space, I begin to wonder, could the very tools we create to forge our future be the agents of our undoing? Or may those who profit of them wish to be gone? Upon opening the website the game is hosted on, we are greeted with a rudimentary and quite apprehensive exterior, one that feels pointy and sharp yet clever and misaligned, artsy but heartful. We're greeted with a picture of the Tower of Babel, its upper section highlighted as we are thrown right into the game. A hallway, empty and desolate like most of the game's environments. We are haunted by a droning soundtrack which inspires dread. There are but two actions to do: walk forward, like in typical walking sim fashion, and interacting with Sanctuary's solitary yet potent other mechanic. A text box placed in the upper right feels like engaging in a forbidden dialogue with entities that defy conventional understanding. It has yet to make sense. However, as we begin walking in its endless void, upon opening the first door, we are greeted with the first of many labyrinths. Its concrete walls, unopenable doors, its ambient music coming in as bells whistle around the empty halls. Murals line the walls, depicting scared-looking medieval paintings. These textures, interlapped with the rockish textures, collapse under a feeling of dread, causing deep-rooted fear. The environment is dissonant, lost and complex but simple in their linearity, although they frequently turn to mazes. Entering a subsequent room, at one point we end up deciding one layer. Here we are greeted with our first creature, a disembodied blob of skin, human heads and rot. It's time to interact with, for the first time, the text box mechanic. Reluctantly, I speak to the creature. Every keystroke that I press is a deliberate act, a summoning of responses of programmed randomness, and a deliberate echo of human madness, as the digital phantom reply with disjointed fragments, phrases that occasionally mirror my own, internal murmurs. I'm left questioning the nature of communication itself. Are these cryptic responses simply the byproduct of an algorithm, or do they carry the weight of an ancient lore, a lore that transcends the mundane and speaks directly to the core of our collective disquiet? I know the voices of this game, the monsters, the creatures, the selves are programmed to some sort of AI, not in the game sense. The exterior of the game world, in this case, to me is a casket, a mortuary casket. Its programming alien to the contents of its artistic merits. The responses seem powered by that. This one in particular speaks of a virus. A virus emerges from our gutters. Gutters, a place where waste collects, where filth accumulates. This suggests the virus is born from society's discarded refuse. Maybe not just literal trash, but ideological or technological waste. A disease spawned by excess, by the things we abandon, but that never truly disappear. By the technological advancement we push forward on our unexperienced selves, this place is a quarantine for those with the virus. There's an implication of isolation, a place meant to contain the infected, but who enforces the quarantine? Is the world already lost and this is just a remnant of failed containment? Or does it suggest that some force still maintains in the ruin, keeping the infected locked away like a forgotten relic? There's barely anyone around. Who is keeping these souls inside the Tower of Babel? The virus was a technology that emerged out of the waste of human civilization's waste. The repetition of waste is crucial. It enforces the idea that humanity's progress eventually generates its downfall. Not just pollution or garbage, it's technological waste, automation, AI, endless streams of information. What if the virus isn't biological, but informational? An emergent sickness caused by the sheer weight of accumulated data, misinformation, and forgotten digital ghosts. Loss of faith, worse, downfall, due to the disparity of opinion, fallout. They're also prevalent in today's society. Things we would take for granted other times are replaced by hostility. The plague destroyed the entire world of our civilization. Not just civilization, but its entire world. This makes it seem like the virus wasn't just a cataclysm, it was an erasure. Maybe not a violent destruction, but a slow, creeping decay that left nothing recognizable behind. There's something Lovecraftian in the way this is phrased. It implies that what came before is gone, unknowable. What lay before in cryptid's past is now abnormality, as the new normal implies the existence in this pile of corpses, rot, filth, wine. The player exists in the aftermath, trying to piece together meaning from what remains, but he is just exploring a Tower of Babel. Ferarro has always explored the unnatural fashion of consumerism, technology, and meaning. His work feels like a world that has already been digitized and reprinted too many times, until the ink starts to blur. I've spoken about how his work on Last American Hero made me feel in my Dempa video, and as much as I'd like to reiterate this very much, this is clearly his mark. We've heard what he has said in the past. This is deeply rooted within the same ideology, but it strays further. Maybe decadence? The idea that the copy has replaced the original. The creature talks like AI because they are AI trained on scraps of meaning, stitched together into a facsimile of intelligence. In that sense, it's not only the fact their literal code outside the game runs on Microsoft's own AI, but the inside of the game is reflected in the twisted mirror. Somewhat they resemble what would happen if you would teach someone to speak from prompts of AI. How would they show suffering? I think Bladee's vision breaks through somewhat here too. Since it's a collaborative effort from both of them, there must have been some sort of influence from the Drain sphere. Drain is about extracting something, energy, meaning, power, until nothing is left but an empty husk. This is where Bladee and Ferraro's worldviews collapse into each other. The game itself feels drained, not because of its implication to drain, but because of the opposing musical and theoretical ideologies of its creators. That, however, seems entirely intentional. Bladee's music has always had this feeling of being ghostly, half-present, like it exists in the space between reality and digital decay. His voice is auto-tuned to the point of near non-humanity, floating over beats that feel like echoes of a civilization that has already died. You could say that, but it would be the most ingenious way of describing Drain. However, it reflects more of trap than any other genre of movement. I can't say it's not artistic, however. This is purely my interpretation. As I've said, I sense intention in that. So let's talk a bit about the visuals. The visual language of Sanctuary speaks in cryptic dialects of erosion and entropy. Colors are drained as if the world itself has succumbed to an irreversible illness. There is an overwhelming presence of green, yellowish. Not the green of life, but the green of corrosion. Not the yellow of the sun, but that of metal long left to rust. Of something once organic, now overtaken by mold and filth. The environment is thick with the presence of decay, and yet it is not without purpose. I find myself drawn to the murals that stretch across walls like half-forgotten dreams, each depicting moments of history wrapped by time and neglect. The deeper I go, the more it becomes clear that these murals are more than mere decoration. They are a warning, a silent testament to something lost, something that should have never been forgotten, the history of those who came before, the history of those who were tortured and killed. Every step I take is heavy with the knowledge that I am walking through the remains of a world that tried to exceed its own limitations and paid the price for doing so. The structures around me are not just ruins, they are the tombstones of a civilization that once believed itself invincible. There's something deeply unsettling about the way architecture twists upon itself, as if it has been reshaped not by time but by something more sinister, something that took root in the foundations of this place and spread like an infection. The very walls seem to groan under the weight of their own history, whispering the secrets of a world that crumbled beneath its own hubris. The metal door creaked when open. The faces stare at you from the murals. The deeper I go, the more I feel the weight of something unseen pressing against me. This is not a game about overcoming adversity or triumphing against impossible odds. There is no victory here, no catharsis. Instead, there is only the slow realization that I'm not escaping the place, I'm sinking into it. The tower, the creatures, the fragmented dialogue, everything suggests a descent, not just into the physical depths of this world, but into a deeper, more fundamental truth about existence. That progress does not always mean enlightenment. That technology is not inherently salvation. That given enough time, every civilization, no matter how advanced, will succumb to its own excesses and be swallowed by the very systems it once controlled. In many ways, its environments feel similar to those of dreamlike games like Humaniki. At the same time, they don't. The walking speed is slow. You feel your feet barely dragging from the ground. Its creatures nonsensical, their words repeating. The womb of the world. I find the interplay of technology and decay speaks volumes about the nature of our era. The game's narrative is not linear, it is an intricate story told from the threads of technological ambition and the specter of collapse. I'm compelled to confront uncomfortable questions about the future. Will our ceaseless drive for innovation ultimately render us obsolete? Or will it forge a new paradigm where humanity, frailty, is reimagined through the lens of digital transformation? Each interaction, every corrupted code and ambient whisper strokes a shimmering tension, a tension that leaves me pondering the ultimate price of progress in a world where the promise of connection is perennially overshadowed by isolation. The walls, the murals, get increasingly more abstract, creepy, the faces on the walls mocking for they do not understand or do something we don't. A creature lays in a room filled with paintings of torture, its face as usual amorphous, malformed just like the rest. In the depths of this decaying reality, they are not monsters in the traditional sense. They are something else. Many of them appear as writhing masses of organs tangled with inorganic remnants, wooden crosses, rusted metal, faceless masks, decayed remnants of what might have once been human. Their forms are nonsensical, deliberately so, embodying the kind of grotesque transformation that occurs when the body no longer obeys the laws of nature. They speak, but their words are fragmented, enigmatic. I am a worm, I am a sentient being. Their statements drift between existential declarations and nonsensical ramblings, as if something within them is struggling to hold on to meaning, to cling to identity despite their dissolution into this fractured world. Some are alone, some are hopeless. The creature mentions viruses, plagues, technology that emerged out of the waste of human civilization's waste. The phrase repeats itself in my mind, human civilization's waste, as if technology, the very thing we create, is not merely our salvation, but the refuse of our ambition, the byproduct of a system that cannot stop consuming, even as if it devours itself. The virus they speak of is not just biological, it is technological, existential. It is inevitable consequence of a world where progress outspaces wisdom, where the pursuit of power leaves nothing but ruin in its wake. And so I listen to them. I listen to their warnings, their despair, their cries of being quarantined, of a plague that destroyed the entire world of our civilization. The implications are too heavy to ignore. If Sanctuary is a rotting post-drain wasteland, then its sound design is the wind that howls through its empty corridors. A haunting, ever-present hum of a world past the point of salvation. The game is filled with droning ambient textures, a sonic landscape that exists somewhere between decay and eternity. There is no warmth to be found, no melody to hold on to, just a constant sense of dissolution, as if the entire world is dissolving into itself. Ferraro's involvement is unmistakable here. extremely remarkable. He has always made an impact through his music. Through how strange it sounds, the music in Sanctuary is no different. It is less composed, more unearthed, as if these sounds have been playing forever, buried under layers of rust and static, waiting for someone to stumble upon them. We meet creatures of absurd loneliness. I see you. I have been here forever. In this world, I am the only person alive. As we approach the end, traversing a labyrinth leads us to another pile. I am Leech, laying eggs inside of the heaps of a severed humanity, it says. Here, the creature identifies itself as a leech, a parasite of sorts, a being that clings to and thrives off the decaying remnants of humanity. In this imagery, the heaps of a severed humanity, it evokes a vision of society, fragmented and discarded, reduced to waste. The leech is feeding and reproducing, ensuring that the parasitic state is self-perpetuating. To me, this resonates deeply with the metaphor of digital overconsumption. Our society, inundated by an endless stream of data and disposable content, becomes a fertile ground for such parasitism, a virus that not only consumes but also replicates its own decay, feeding off the detritus of our fractured collective identity. I am the architect of the reign of terror, where a cursed god is being executed. I was a ray of hope that fed off the gluttonous visions of a starving humanity. Paints the picture of a fallen god, one of decay and mistake who could not run away from the endless stream, a promised hero now reduced to a pile of rotting meat. Descending to the lowest depths of the tower, we are locked forever in it. In the circle we meet the cross and two cubes, both worn of death and decay, and past prisons filled with creatures. Upon entering what appears to be the final door, we are greeted with a prison-like interior. A door looms. Along the way we meet creatures who present our decay, but we ignore them, and now we are ourselves forever locked at the bottom. No sign of escape, as the screen fades to black. And here lies the real question. Not one the game asks, but one it forces me to ask myself. Can we escape this condition? The game does not give me an answer. The ending is not triumphant, nor does it suggest a clear path forward. It simply leaves me with an uneasy feeling. A realization that whatever world I have wandered through was not designed to be fixed, only to be witnessed. I leave Sanctuary feeling as if I too have been drained. The game has not provided catharsis, it has not given me clarity. It has instead infected me with its questions, lingering like a phantom signal that refuses to fade. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Sanctuary is not a game at all, but a warning that lingers in the mind long after the screen fades to black. But wait, there's another ending? Perhaps that cathartic feeling wasn't in vain. If we climb the tower instead of descending, if we hug the right wall, we enter a circular area, and as we proceed further and further towards the middle of a circle, we climb into a labyrinth, going closer and closer to the ceiling, as if ascending. The circular area leading into a labyrinth could represent breaking free from the circle of collapse, a literal symbolic ascension towards something other than ruin. If Sanctuary is about hyperreality and the virus of digital overconsumption, this ending feels like a rejection of that downward spiral, a way out, or at least a desperate attempt at one. But what is at the top? If the depths are filled with the grotesque remains of a fallen society, does this mean the peak holds an upstanding one? Or perhaps even worse, if hyperreality is a labyrinth of illusion, maybe climbing doesn't lead to salvation, but instead an even greater level of artificiality, a revelation that there is no outside to escape to. Perhaps a symbolic element, but when descending we hug the left wall, moving counterclockwise, spiraling deeper into the bowel of the sanctuary, the tower. Often in occult and esoteric traditions, the left-hand path is often associated with chaos and destruction, and breaking from order. It's the path of decay, dissolution, and losing oneself in the abyss. Hugging the left wall feels like an act of surrender, allowing ourselves to be guided downward by unforeseen forces. But when ascending, we hug the right wall, moving clockwise, as if unwinding the spiral, attempting to break free. In contrast to the left-handed path, the right-handed path is often tied to order, enlightenment, an ascension. It suggests deliberate resistance, an attempt to climb out of the labyrinth of rot rather than being consumed by it. Is this a mere mechanical choice or a deeper symbolic structure? Does the game reward conformity to entropy and punish resistance, or does it acknowledge the very act of choosing to hug a wall? Moving in a direction is itself an illusion of control. Climbing up to the top, we are greeted with a closed-off room. A labyrinth stands full of murals. In there are similar gestures to the ones seen below, in the bad ending, if we were to call it that. We have built a tower of apex communication, they say. This proclamation seems to be a grim celebration of a communication system that has peaked, a system that has become so self-referential and saturated that it no longer fosters genuine dialogue, but rather a hyperbolic echo chamber, words without meaning, the tower itself. Perhaps it could represent the idea that in our current society we've constructed layers of communication that should ideally bring us together, yet often isolate and fragment us further. The gestures are a symbol of chaotic mirth and the subversion of order, the joker, the trickster. They remind me that even in our highest efforts at connection, there's an undercurrent of absurdity and despair. They are both the critics and the products of our cultural excess, laughing at a system that promises clarity while delivering conclusion. In the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, humanity bands together to build a colossal tower, reaching towards heaven, aiming to make a name for themselves. In response, God confuses their language, causing chaos and scattering people across the earth, resulting in the creation of diverse languages and cultures. The actions of the game since thereafter, a time in which the tower was built, now intelligible. Words and screams and pleas for help come from these lost souls. I witnessed the world crumble in all its beauty, says the jester. I am in isolation yet connected to an infinite network of being. The tower is an interconnected web of realities. Descending further in the labyrinth, we meet a singular flower at the middle. Europe was in a state of desolation and disease. My visions purified me. In this caged room, screams at the sky. The skylight opened towards the reddish hues of a night long lost into the skies. I had sensations of light in the pastures of folly. This line isn't meant to be taken as a literal depiction of Europe, but rather as a metaphorical representation of civilization in decay. The mention of Europe invokes a set of cultural and historical images, a once great, now crumbling civilization reaching myth and tragedy. The speaker's vision, which purified them amid the desolation and disease, suggests that in the midst of ruin, moments of clarity or transcendence can still emerge. It's a call to see beyond the literal decay into the possibility of transformation, even if that transformation is wrought through suffering. The pastures of folly themselves merely represent a field of hope. It's a melancholic indication of a scenario that flower forces upon us. I was kept inside of a small prison and then led out into the open square. In the ruins of the marketplace I was burned. I am Jeanne d'Arc. My remains were cast into the stagnant waters of the Seine. Michael was a child who had visions of saints, and he was a saint. Jeanne d'Arc's invocation as a martyr isn't about literal history, but symbolizes the transformative power of sacrifice and resistance in the face of inevitable collapse. The dialogue, layered in allegory, societies may fall into ruin, and within that ruin, the seeds of poignant, if tragic rebirth might be sown. We push on further, and meet yet another jester. We have asserted our dominance over God and nature, each voice self-contained within its own shell. There was no silence in the pit where the shouting persisted. A sewer of voices, gluttonous, isolated and godlike. The tower can be seen from any point on earth. It emerges from out of the plexus of sewers and canals. A space devoid of quietude, where chaos and clamor are perpetual. The pit implies a deep, almost primordial layer of existence, where endless shouting occurs, reinforcing the idea of a world overwhelmed by constant communication. In a digital age, it could represent the unending stream of information, opinions and data, a cacophony that leaves no room for introspection or genuine silence. Yet the challenge towards God and nature seems like a foolish one, which most likely led to the downfall of the civilization of those who wanted to reach God and twisted their tongues. Unlike a structure built for noble aspirations, the tower rises from a tangled network of sewers and canals, a visual metaphor for the underbelly of civilization. It's a structure that is omnipresent, visible from anywhere, implying that no matter where you are, you're enveloped by the consequences of digital decay and hyperreality. The imagery of plexus suggests a complex, intertwined system, a network of waste and forgotten connections that somehow gives rise to something imposing and inescapable. We push on further, we keep descending deeper into the labyrinth. We finally make it to the top. A spinning structure is seen, this time spinning in the clear sky of a spring's afternoon as it speaks. Symmetry is self-sustaining in many systems. Symmetry is a natural principle that arises due to the laws of physics, such as conservation of energy and momentum. Symmetry can be shown visually in examples like the geometric arrangement of snowflakes or the balanced wings of a butterfly. At the pinnacle of the tower, where the spinning structure greets us with its litany of cosmic observations, I find myself facing a meditation on the very nature of existence. Its voice speaks in fragments, each a reflection on a different facet of our reality, from the self-sustaining symmetry of physical laws to the emergent complexity of consciousness and free will, questioning that we may be one day replaced. CGI mimesis and mathematical precision strives to recreate the nuances of natural phenomena. This in turn makes the idea of free thought a part of science, suggesting that our technological advancements are both a reflection of and a contributor to the emergent order in our universe. Symmetry is present everywhere, from microscopic structures like DNA to macroscopic phenomena like planetary orbits. Aesthetic judgments are processed in the brain's orbitofrontal cortex, which is associated with the reward and emotional evaluation. FXOP2, a gene linked to language development, underwent mutations in humans that may have facilitated speech capabilities. Language and consciousness are interlinked, as language provides a medium to express complex thoughts and abstract ideas. The development of self-awareness, a key aspect of consciousness, is thought to have conferred advantages in decision-making and social interaction. The evolution of consciousness and language is a complex process tied to cognitive, neurological, and social development in humans. Language comprehension is mediated by neural pathways connecting auditory processing regions with those involved in meaning and syntax. Mathematics in CGI mimesis allows the accurate simulation of natural phenomena like light scattering to evoke specific psychological responses in viewers. Mimesis combines mathematical precision and artistic intention to replicate light and texture, simulating the brain's visual and emotional centers. Primitive biosystems like early Canadians used rudimentary nerve nets to process basic sensory inputs, forming the foundation for more advanced neural systems. The first eyes, known as the ocelli, were simple structures that could only detect light intensity, evolving into compound and camera-type eyes over millions of years. The progression from low-resolution sensory systems to high-definition perception mirrors the increase. Mortality is perceived as an end, but in reality, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It simply transforms, making existence a continuous flow rather than a termination. Integration of diverse sensory and cognitive inputs, global network in the species, and the historical continuity of biological data. In that moment, I realized that tower, the jester, the labyrinth, all the symbols of both decay and decadence and transcendence are mere not relics of a bygone era. They are signposts guiding me to the recognition that our choices, however illusionary they may seem, are part of an intricate interplay between chaos and order, between the ephemeral and the eternal. The spinning structure with its seemingly endless monologue calls me to question the nature of control. Is our will a genuine force or just a fleeting illusion with a self-organizing system? And yet, even as it poses these existential riddles, it offers no simple answers. Only enduring invitation to seek, to wonder, and to embrace the mystery of it all. When will we ever learn? I question, but none come to answer, as I sit alone in my room once again.